I'm not married. He is married. That was something where I was like, I'm going in a partnership with him, not his spouse or wife. That was something the moment when we were signing was like, nope, if you're married, you got to sign the dotted line too. And not that it changed the dynamic of now there's three owners, it's still two 50-50 partners. However, that is just something to kind of consider because that throws a different wrench in the wheel if something would happen on that side. Because then you're held like, oh, well, if he gets in marital problems or divorce or whatever we talk about, that could affect me as a landowner. I didn't know that.
In this episode, we dive into some of the drawbacks of buying a farm in a partnership. We have Joe, and he talks about his experience. A lot of these things he admits are avoidable, but I think it's important to talk about what something like this could look like and some different avenues to avoid the pitfalls of buying a farm in a partnership. So I hope you guys really enjoy this episode. This week, starting a limited series show on Wire to Hunt Meat Eaters podcast network called Back 40. I hope you guys really enjoy it. It's been a lot of fun to really record it. And so each week is one question with 8 experts answering the same question. And tomorrow on the Whitetail podcast, we will have a teaser of that. Not really a teaser. It'll be a full-blown episode. And then on Wednesday will be episode 1 on Wire to Hunt. And so I hope you guys really enjoy that. And as always, I want to say thank you to Onyx for supporting the Land Podcast here. And that is it. Quick intro. Let's get into it. Joe, welcome to the Land Podcast. How you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting conversation. We've gotten to chat here a little bit, and I feel I always love the really awesome rosy stories of how great everything went, and sometimes things don't necessarily go terrible, but maybe they don't go as planned. And I think that maybe we'll get into some of that conversation here today. But before we do that, who are you?
Yeah, well, my name's Joe Kavanaugh. I live in Denver, Colorado now, which we had a good conversation about. But I'm originally from central Minnesota. Grew up just like most rural or semi-rural kids, hunting and fishing a ton. I had a little different upbringing as my family owns a resort up there in Brainerd, where I'm from. It's a really tourist destination. So in the winters, there's just not a lot going on. In the summers, it's awesome. Like I would say, it's probably top place in the country for 3 months out of the year. Mm-hmm. And but there was a lot of public ground and a lot of ground we had access to. And man, I was just tore up with archery hunting more specifically. So grew up doing that. Kind of took over my life really even from a young age. Like I put all the sports, I mean, I played basketball and golf, but like the fall, I didn't play football, which at a small school, if you're not playing all sports, like you're kind of an outcast a little bit. So, and then fast forward, I graduated college and moved down to the same company I work for right now that was headquartered in Tampa, spent some time in Tampa, then moved to Orlando, spent, I think my total time in Florida was like 7 years. And I basically stopped hunting. I did a trip with my family, like to South Dakota. Archery hunting is something we've done every year since I've been like 16. And I got like burnt out of Florida, not only like just work wise, but like actually burnt out of Florida. Orlando's rough. Like Tampa's cool because it's on the water. Orlando being landlocked. I'm not a Disney guy. If you are, awesome. Not for me. But then I got the opportunity to move to, I had clients out here in Denver and I had the opportunity to move out here. And so I jumped at it not knowing a soul. And truly, the hunting community or the archery specifically community is what kind of made me feel at like home. Like it's weird when you're 30 or 32 or whatever, meeting new friends. It's just tough. And everybody says like Denver's a melting pot. It's super cliquey. Like people looked at me sideways living in the city, be like, wait, you hunt? I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I'm doing. So, but yeah, so that's what I am. And out here now. And I do a ton of Western hunting, but that's like 1 month of the year. And so I still do any whitetail hunting I can. And then kind of what we'll talk about is the hunting property that a partner and I purchased almost 2.5 years ago in Western Kansas. And that was just to kind of scratch the itch of trying to be a landowner and trying to, be a land manager, deer manager, whatever you want to call it. And so that's, that takes a vast majority of my time right now.
Yeah, that's super
So,
cool. And it's interesting that the whitetail, I feel like when people go west as a Midwest person, they fall in love with the West. But yeah, and I always ask people, if elk and if September, I'm trying to say this in the proper way. September elk hunting of what it is in people's mind and what's built up fell in November, and you could only do November whitetails or pretend that September elk hunting is in November. Which one would you pick? And it's always interesting to hear what
oh,
people's thoughts are. But what's yours? Where would you fall?
I've actually never thought of that. That's a great question for elk hunters, or whitetail hunters that have done elk hunting. My short answer would be I want to do both, and I'll figure out any way. I'll sell a kidney to do both. But for me, I would choose the whitetail rut, even though
Mm,
like oh my gosh, having a 600-800 pound animal come screaming at your face like you'll never forget that moment. But I also feel like you got 100 and I mean, I don't even care how big a deer or elk it is. If you have that experience in the interactions with them, it's pretty great. But I will tell one story. So I moved out here in, I think 9 years ago. So whatever that would be. I was like the outcast talking about how fun whitetail hunting is.
mm,
And like people looked at me and then I slowly start to see the trickle because I said, I'm like, September's just 1 month, but we could hunt October, November, and then some states and properties, if you have late season, that's like the most fun for whitetails.
right.
So I started to see this transition of some, I'll call them Western hunter influencers who probably would talk a little shit on the whitetail hunter start to kind of creep into that. And I was like, all right, yeah, this is cool. This is cool. And then it just started to, like everybody started to do it. But that also is kind of the problem on public land and access to all the states around Colorado, like Nebraska, South Dakota, Kansas,
Mhm.
Oklahoma, all just, I'm sure it's a ton of folks coming into those areas to hunt. Now, hey, I can't, I'd be a hypocrite if I was talking trash on because that is me and was me. So
Yeah, 100%. How far from Denver to Western Kansas, where you ended up buying? How far is that drive?
4.5 hours from my 4 hours and 15 minutes, depending on how much coffee I have and how many stops I got to make in the
Mhm.
morning. But yeah, about 4 hours and 15 minutes. And one thing I want to touch on, I've done a few podcasts talked about Kansas. Everyone's like, well, Colorado has great whitetail hunting, and they really do. You'll see some videos online of some giant deer being whitetail deer being killed. The one problem with that is the way the tag allocations are is a whitetail buck tag in certain areas is a quote unquote A-list tag. Well, I'm pretty ate up, and we did talk about this with high country mule deer hunting. That also is a A-list tag. And so you only can get one A-list tag. So you really need to kind of choose, pick your poison, really. So
Yeah.
that's and you can buy private landowner tags and have those. Like I'm talking about like if you own land, I think you might be able to do something different and get both tags, but I didn't. So that's what led me to Kansas. It was proximity
Mhm.
to that, and I looked at Nebraska and I looked at Oklahoma. And my biggest two things of why, number one, I don't think Nebraska, well, either one is a $2 state. So I think anybody, or definitely as a landowner or resident, you could buy $2 tags. And to me, I don't care how like well the resources managed. That is just like, I'm like, I don't think that's going to be good. And everyone's like, well, how many people shoot $2? I think a lot. And I think they just shoot one to fill the freezer and then, oh, last day of season, well, that 8 pointer, it doesn't matter. I might never even come back and just smoke another 2.5 year old. I don't know. But that's what drew me to Kansas. And I'd hunted Kansas for like 4 years. And I mean,
Fell
I
in
don't
love
want
with
to
it.
be yeah, it was awesome. It really is cool, at least Western Kansas, because you can use every tactic of hunting possible. Tree stands, saddles if you're into saddles. I'm not, but that's a whole nother podcast. But ground blinds, spot and stalk, ambush, the whole gamut is out there. Where I don't think if you get further east into Eastern Kansas or Missouri or where you are in Illinois, you probably are like, well, why would you sit on the ground? Like, no, you just get up in a tree. Well,
Yeah.
if you're on a 1,000-acre CRP field, that you don't have a tree. So it just kind of opens up for kind of runs the gamut of being able to how to chase them, which is, I think, a lot of fun. A lot of good chess matches going on out there. So
I think that probably plays into the Western hunter free spiritedness. I feel like
yeah,
Western hunters are pretty free spirited.
yeah,
Just given the vastness of land and opportunity and everything else that goes along with that. So Western Kansas probably does seem like a really good fit. Now, you lived in Florida for 7 years. You moved to Denver to have opportunities to hunt, be a Colorado resident. When did you think? When were you thinking like, man, I just might try to buy a piece of ground? Because I think that's a big step for a lot of people. But I always ask everyone, when did you know you wanted to buy ground? For some people, it's very early on, and sometimes it's a little bit later on throughout their life.
yeah. So it kind of started pretty young. So my dad actually, it was funny. My dad had access to some ground that they could access to get to state ground. And this is like 30, I mean, probably 45 years ago. And that farm had to be sold. Well, he didn't have the money. I'm talking like if you would, like, it was not, I mean, hundreds of dollars an acre, not much at all, but he didn't have the money.
Mhm.
So, anyways, he brought in a good family friend. And, anyways, that's the farm that I grew up on. And we did all the work, like food plots, like even before it was kind of popular. Like my dad's the original QDMA guy, but also now what we've learned is like we thought tilling the ground as deep as possible. Like all this stuff's coming out, and I was back home in July for the 4th of July, and we joked about how inexperienced we were on the stuff that we know now, like just everything about it. So I was always so like, this is awesome. Like, this is so fun to sit on a tractor or four-wheeler and then plant it. And then,
Watch
so
it grow.
yeah, watch it grow. And where it really changed for me was the landowner that had purchased it. That's still a good friend of my dad's. He has since passed away. It was just, you get money involved and people need money. And so he had to sell it. And it was at a price that really probably was higher than what was marketed. And anyways, my parents couldn't buy it, and it fell through. And I was like, man, that's where I wish, like, 30 years ago, he would have said, hey, give me 10% of the property and put in what he could have and be and this goes into the partnership side of it, of that, but actually just not be like a land manager where you don't own the land, but actually be a part of it. So that's always been in the back of my mind. And I always really cherish the times spent with him doing food plots, hunting, and we had a cabin. It was awesome. Like some of my best memories. So fast forward, we were out in Kansas, and as everybody, the first year I applied, everyone's like, oh my gosh, not everybody got a tag. And it was like 99% chance that you would draw with 0 points. First year ever, for what I heard, that people weren't going to draw. Second year, it went to like 70% that you would draw with 0 points. And then it went to like 40. I'm like, man, I should probably look at buying something, because if you own land, you can hunt that land, but you have to have 80 acres. Well, I'm like, man, if you get a right 80 acres, you probably have a lot of fun. So that's where it started. Just like everybody says, I wish it had bought when I started looking, because I mean, it like 3x'd in a year. Like the properties that were going for, I mean, honestly, people are like, if you pay $1,000 an acre for that, that's just junk. And then like a lot of those people had no clue that the river bottom and these little drainage ditches that held the deer was what people like me were after. They were cattle people, farmers, ag type people. They had no clue what they had. Well, that quickly turned around with realtors like you going to these guys and going, hey, you got a little hidden gem here. So, my partner and I came together, and we bought 160 acres, and we bought 160 acres. So we had no issues getting 2 landowner vouchers, and we could hunt that at any point during the season. And it's pretty easy. And I think we could even like hunt any season. Like we could buy the muzzleloader tag, we could buy the rifle tag, archery tag, but I still think you only could shoot 1 buck.
Yep.
So that's how it happened. And it happened pretty quick. And I think we got a decent deal, but there's a lot of things that I learned around the process of maybe just moving too quick, or maybe not having the people to chat with about like, hey, what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on that? And here's this property. Here's the plus side. Here's the delta on it. Like, and so, yeah, I mean, I learned a lot, and I don't know where you want to get into it, but
Well,
but that's kind of how it got started.
yeah, I think that's really interesting because it does. I call it land fever. Every now and then,
Yeah.
I get land fever so bad. It's like I gotta go stand in the cold water or something because I'm just like so
Yeah.
fired up and ready to do something. And I feel like everyone falls into that category at some point. So, you guys kind of developed this plan like, okay, we buy a 160, we both can hunt it every year, get in the game. Now, throughout that process, you know, were you looking for an 80 just by yourself at one point? And then were you like, okay, I can probably afford X amount at this price per acre? Like, what was kind of the pre-shopping thought process before you guys, really started looking?
So I'd been looking for the 2 years prior, and truthfully, I wish I would have pulled the trigger, and I had some chances to do that, but if I knew what I knew now, and maybe not even like knew, but just heard how everything goes, and it's like, yeah, I wish I'd have bought Apple stock, and when it started, for sure, like obviously, right? um but I had a chance in that time. A second mortgage for me was like 3.5, 4%, and
Hmm.
then cost per acre was like 1,500. And where I killed one of my biggest deer, like a 168, was on public walking ground, and I met the family, and it's like, I love being out in the country, the salt of the earth, the best. I've never met any bad people as long as you're taking care of their land. They get a little ornery if you're driving your truck through their pasture field, but so I had been looking, and at that time I was just kind of talking to my buddies about this, and my now business partner is like, hey, I'd be interested in that. And so then the 80 turned into 160.
Hmm.
And I guess the easiest way to say it was, it's just like no one plans on divorce.
Hmm.
Even with a prenup, no one's planning on getting a divorce. Well, we probably we put the cart before the horse, and like you said, we got land fever, and this property came up and was awesome. And it was like, just like what you've talked with a whole bunch of your guests, you better be out there the day of. And I saw how land was going over the years, and I saw the stuff that was sitting, and I saw the stuff that was just hitting the market and then pending. And the one thing I wish there was like a Zillow for land, and maybe there is, maybe you could tell me, but so then I know what it goes for. But there isn't any of that, is there?
Not really for consumer facing. No, not
Mm.
really.
So I had no clue. I just knew what these were listed for, and then I just kind of assumed they weren't going for asking.
Mhm.
Well, that assumption changed pretty quick, and was like, I called on a few properties, and I'm like, hey, would they accept 2,500? They're like, we just got a full asking offer at 3,000. And I'm like, whoa. And so if you're not that or more, like, I'm not even going to draft it up.
Yeah.
So anyways, we found this piece. It's awesome. Visually awesome. Like, if I would show it to you, or you drive in there, you'd be like, oh my God, this place is the Mecca of all Mecca. And it did have some good deer on it. But a few things that I learned was mineral rights. We don't have mineral rights, or we didn't, which to me, if you've ever been in Western Kansas, all good places have oil, like jack pumps on them. And
Mhm.
I have actually like almost killed deer literally sitting up next to the post of these jack pumps. So in my mind, I'm like, I don't care. The deer aren't going to care. It's there every day.
Mhm.
And then access. And I think I was listening to your podcast with Skip Sly, and I
Okay. Yeah.
think that came up on a question,
Yep.
and he talked about access. Well, um, I am fortunate enough to know a few very good lawyers, and they looked it up, and in Kansas it's an access by necessity, and I think that's what the term is. And almost anywhere you really can't landlock people, you could fight it, but in Kansas you don't need to fight it. Like, there's already a road there. So in my mind, not a big deal. That landowner's pretty cool, and he's not going to move a 1,000-yard road. And if you deviate off the road, like the limestone road, you're in a muck path. Like it would take him a lot of money to do that. So I was like, non-issue. Well, probably issues in resale, because now you're limiting your ability to find, you're basically limiting as someone with the mindset of me.
Mhm.
And you're probably like, well, there's probably a lot like me, but there's also, that's a small sliver of the pie when you're trying to resell this. So um, I went off on a tangent there, but yeah. So once we found it, it went. I mean, I was out there the next week. We put in almost a full asking offer, and it was 45 days to close, and we closed pretty quickly. And then from that point on, it was kind of all hands on deck trying to figure out what to do with the property. And we had ideas, and so it was a whirlwind. And then in the middle of that, I this is something I haven't talked to you about. I think I closed in the hospital when my at that time fiance and I had twins.
Oh my gosh.
So like, don't if anybody's out there having children and looking at land, unless you are very, very like, don't do it. Like, just like you talk about, like I think I was having baby fever of like post baby fever of I wasn't thinking clearly enough. And so I want to like use that as like my crutch of like, hey, I made a lot of mistakes during this process, but my mind wasn't there. That will be my built-in excuse for this. But yeah, so that was another caveat to the whole thing of that. But it's also, land was going crazy at that time, so that was
What
tough.
what were rates when you bought that?
Um, like 7.2 to 7.7, 7.5,
Okay.
like something like that. But
Yep.
we got in at a like like a farm credit union.
Mhm.
And the one that we're using actually gives what they call a patronage check, and I don't like, some of them didn't. So
Mhm.
really, like each year we get like, because it's like a co-op, and so we get money back. And
Mhm.
so really our rate's a lot lower. So it's not as bad, but yeah, 7.5%. And we're just like with a lot of people in just regular real estate, hoping for the market to drop.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's what the rates were at. And they haven't really changed all that much for raw land anyways. So
Mhm.
hoping for it.
And that were they how'd you find that lender?
It just local, just
Okay.
and talk to realtors and just say,
Mhm.
hey, and they gave me like three. I talked to them, told them this, and fortunately enough, like that whole process was almost like, I don't know, it's so easy.
That's
Like
surprising. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, like any type of real estate. I mean, and I will say I probably I do fairly well. But like everybody looks at and they're like, yep, you're good. And I'm like, yeah, that's what? They're like, yeah, whatever. and I'm like, wait, but I can't monthly afford that. And like, that's the crazy thing about these lenders, and why I can see in like 2008 how it happened. It was like, well, you should afford a $300,000 home, but we're going to approve you for 800. And I'm like, you're out of your mind.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
but
that I think yeah, people got to really figure out their own financing because it can be yeah, I mean it can be yeah, your eyes may be more hungry than your stomach. It's maybe one way to say it. But
yep.
I think most people are I think overall most people I've dealt with are usually pretty savvy when it comes to their own finances and like, yeah, I could afford more, but this is what I'm really comfortable with. And so I think that's probably an important question to have. But yeah, isn't it crazy versus houses? Um, I mean, I've sold a bunch of houses too, so it's just like the process throughout a land transaction versus a house transaction. It blows my
Yeah.
mind how much more straightforward typically a land real estate transaction is versus oftentimes a house. But yeah, and
Yeah.
that's from loan to
Everything.
everything that happens before the closing.
I remember my partner and I literally going, are we done? Like we both bought and sold homes, and we're like,
Yeah,
it was just nothing. Like the bank,
yeah,
I don't even think the bank went and looked at the land. The bank's like, yeah, whatever, you're good. As a matter of
yeah.
fact, the bank like knew I had a partner coming into it, and they're like, yeah, you're good. I'm like,
Oh
yeah, but
wow.
you don't even know his name. He's like, yo,
Yeah.
you're good. And I'm like, oh, sweet. Perfect. Well,
So
but you can add him to the mortgage just in case I'm not good at some point,
yeah,
is that
yeah.
okay? Yeah.
So
So
if you want to know where property boundaries are for public or private, you want to develop a great plan for your farm, document perfect access to a blind, to a tree stand, carve out and measure food plots, connect your Moultrie trail cameras to an app that shows exactly where they're at, and you can look at the feed for that specific camera location, then Onyx is something you need to check out. It is the only mapping software I use when it comes to deer hunting. I've tried other pieces of software, different apps, and I always go back to Onyx because I think it is the most comprehensive, easy to use, and robust mapping software there is when it comes to hunting and land ownership. You want to send a pen to a friend, boom, send it to them right to text, opens it up. Maybe you have notes, maybe you have pictures on that pin, transfers all of it. You want to send a whole entire folder of a plan that you mocked up, you can do that on Onyx. So be sure to check out Onyx. They are a huge supporter of the Land Podcast. They allow us to travel around and talk to some folks that can give you really good insight and good information no matter where you're at in your process of buying land. Let's get back to the conversation.
A question I have. So, so you guys got the loan jointly. Is that how that worked? So basically, if he went to go buy something or you went to go buy something else, the total loan value would be, I'm making up a number, $1 million. Instead of it being 500,000 you're on the hook for and 500,000 the other guy's on the hook for, it basically, like, when they pull your credit, Joe has $1 million on a farm. Did I frame that well enough?
kind of. Yeah, and I actually was confused about that too. And I just heard approved, and I was like, good to go. And so we're both on the mortgage statement, if you will, because we're on the title of the land. And then we just monthly payment and everything's good. And then if anything happened, there's minimal service fees to
Drop one guy off,
put it on. One other thing that I will say about Kansas, and this is something I think, and you could talk maybe to Illinois or other, I'm not married. He is married. And that was something where I was like, well, I'm going in a partnership with him, not his spouse or wife. And that was something, the moment when we were signing was like, nope, if you're married, you got to sign the dotted line too. And not that it changed the dynamic of now there's 3 owners. It's still 2 50-50 partners. However, that is just something to kind of consider, because that throws a different wrench in the wheel if something would happen on that side, because then you're held like, oh, well, if he gets in, marital problems or divorce or whatever we talk about, that could affect me as a landowner. I didn't know that until, like, honestly, they're like, hey, we need signatures. And then her name was on. I was like, whoa, this is, and at that point, honestly, I'm kind of the guy that goes in to buy a new car and I just get so hung up on the car, or it probably, my truck is a great example. It was like, I just want this truck. And then all of a sudden it was like, well, you want to add that? Yeah. And then all of a sudden it's just more money. And I'm like, whatever, just get me out of the door and get me driving this thing. And that kind of was like probably not the right attitude for the amount of money we were spending, but you live, you learn.
Yeah, 100%. So then you mentioned you had reached out to some attorneys prior to purchasing about access. How did you guys structure the ownership? So is it a joint tenancy or tenants in common? Or did you get into that on how you guys want to take title or take deed? And I know every state might be a little bit different, but I'm not positive.
I think Kansas, it's a joint tenancy. I think they have both. It's basically, we're both 50-50 partners. The lawyers that I did know, actually I won't go into who I know, but like, they all told me, get an agreement in place. And I literally, we had a verbal agreement, which is all great and rainbows and sunshines, guys. But they all were like, get something in writing and make it legit. And we didn't do that. And, blame it on me having kids and not doing it. I also felt like it's a little
awkward.
Yeah, it's super awkward. And it should have been had before we even looked at properties. What does this look like? What does the buy-sell agreement look like? And guys, do it. Like, anybody out there buying it, just do it. And I'm sure there's so many land people that are, well, that's just common sense. Great. Like you also do this for your career. So go kick rocks, man. Like I'm not talking to you. It's like, I'm not going to give financial advice to a financial advisor. Just so what I'm saying is like the average Joe's, me and my buddy, and probably so many more of your listeners of like, guys, I don't care if it's 1 acre or 1,000 acres. You got to put something in place. And it doesn't have to be scary. Like honestly, with ChatGPT right now, you could put it in and it'll spit out something. It's so easy. Yeah. And you really can put in anything in there. Like I'm obviously saying this tongue in cheek, but like, hey, if I need out and I don't have the money, you can have my second board, whatever kid came out second, Paxton, you got him, like you can do whatever. And so don't make it that, but make it so it's fair. And what I would say is going into any type of land, like there's a few things that I'm sure maybe you could expand on, but for me, why are you buying the land? Before this even happens, you should have an idea and have it be like a common, just a common ground of like, why are we buying this? Are we buying it to flip it? Are we buying it for ever? Are we buying it for like, whatever that is, have at least some structure around that. Mm-hmm. If it's whitetail, like, or any type of animal specific, even turkeys, guy. I did shoot my first turkey this year. It's a lot of fun. I talk a lot of trash about turkey hunting. I'm a changed man.
You are a Western guy for sure. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah, exactly. I won't say it's like elk hunting. No way. It's not even close. So anybody that says that, you're out of your mind. But then have like a management plan, at least somewhat in place of
or
like
a budget. We're going to spend this much on
yes.
food plots. And in Kansas, we're going to spend this much in supplemental feeding each year.
Yep.
We're going to do X amount in capital improvements every single year because these farms do take maintenance.
Oh my gosh. And that's the other thing is like, you should look at all of that and really put pen to paper and then figure out what you guys can do. And that is like, I mean, even just going down into trail cameras,
right.
and like, hey, what are you going to do for a cell plan? Cause that adds up. And how many cameras do we think we need? And, well, I have this, or tree stands, just little things that you're like, not a big deal, but now you're coming together. Yeah. Whose tree stand are we going to use? And so
this additional friction points, like that, like a rock in your shoe, and then the longer you rock the walk, it's like, man, that rock's really kind of pissing me off. And it's like it's not good.
And that's the biggest thing is everybody for the most part. Like I'm in sales, and confrontation's a part of my day, and not like bad confrontation. Just like, hey, if 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, you call it out. If people aren't hitting their numbers on my team, I got to have that hard conversation. Everything that I've done in my professional life, I just like put to the wayside for this. And that's just like you said, the rock in your shoe. It was just these small little things that hard conversations. And here's the caveat, guys or gals. If you have these hard conversations and they're hard before you're buying, that's a red flag. And you almost have to look at your partnership in as like dating and being like, if you're on a date with someone and like she's sitting across from you and you're talking about hunting and she's like, boy, I just don't really like hunting. You're like, well, that's a big part of my life. I hope you don't come into my house because I have dead things hanging everywhere. You're not going to just be like, well, we'll figure it out. She's so hot. Like, no, you're not. You're going to be like, nope, I'm not dealing with that crazy. Like, and so that's the thing is if you have these conversations up front and they're going well, I would say it's a recipe for success. If they're coming back of one feels like the other one's steamrolling them or the other feels like the other one is a know-it-all and it not going to work, guys. And don't do it. Just don't. Like there will be more land. May it be more money? Maybe. Are you going to miss out on something? But I'll tell you right now, there's no dollar figure that I would ever take or in this, in my situation is not horrible, But it could be, I mean, trust me, I've heard of, and so have you. You've probably, when lawyers do get involved and then that starts happening, it's like, no.
No
So
one
to
wins.
kind of back up is get something in place. But I'll also caveat that, and I think people will say this is like, if you get something in place and one party doesn't want to follow it, you have to understand that you probably will need to have lawyers. Like you just can't hash it out. So that's when you need to be like, all right, how much money is this going to cost us both? And use common sense of like, oh, this is going to both cost us $10,000 to fight each other. So $20,000 collective. Well, just figure it out. Be a good person about it. But it all takes communication. So,
Yeah.
but on paper, it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. And I know people are like, yeah, of course, Joe, you're an idiot. Yeah, I will. Hey, over here, idiot. Moving forward, I lived and I learned.
Yeah, well, hopefully this insight will help someone else. So it's very clear that the partnership right now is not probably going exactly how you guys maybe imagined. So what happened? Where's it at? What's been the journey of that? What are you willing to share? What would you prefer not to share? But I think to provide some context to people, I think would be helpful.
Yeah. And so basically it kind of came out, we bought at I would say the uptick
Western
uh,
Kansas.
of Western Kansas. We bought at a really good time. And we had an opportunity to potentially make some money. And in my mind, I didn't really care. Not a big deal. Like I had a 5-year plan of this farm. It wasn't a quick flip. And then it was just a communication breakdown. It was communication between him and I, what his expectations were. And truthfully, it's like, we should have went to couples therapy to like, hey, how do you communicate? It was that. And I'll take as much blame of it as me, where I was probably a hard head to be like, no, I'm not selling it. And you know what? I'm never going to sell. And it's like, well, hindsight, probably shouldn't have said those things. But I also will say, realtors like to kind of pump up the tires a little bit. And we fell right into that. And I think some land was going for, where we would really make a good profit, especially within 12 or 14 months of owning the property. Like, yeah, if you take a step back and you could make 25% on your money in 1 year, you do it. Unless it's like hunting land, like any type of property. And I got emotionally attached to the ground because I just loved being out there. And I think he did too, but yet he was more business type and I was more emotional type, like I didn't want to do it. So we ultimately kind of went back and forth and listed it and then just never got anywhere. And it just was like, we kept on, dropping the price. And we hit the bell curve and now we're on the downward slide. And I think that because where the market is everywhere and interest rates haven't dropped, I think a lot of those middle of the ground farms, like they have good structure, but yet it's not quote unquote turnkey. Haven't been getting the money that they got 2 years ago for it. So,
do you think that's more regional to Western? Because I would say the market here has been pretty. I'd say it's still remained pretty strong and moving upward.
So I think it was a huge spike. I think it was almost kind of like a frenzy.
The Western Kansas whitetail gold rush.
It was. But then all of a sudden you start peeling back the layers, and everyone was going, "Oh wait, Kansas just went through 3 years of drought. There's no one doing predator control. There's no one in coyotes, raccoons, nothing. The deer population's going down, whether it's through CWD or EHD, and truly, like, we found dead deer on our farm. I found two this last year. One I know for a fact was he just died because he got in a fight and broke his jaw. The others, I'm almost certain was shot on the road in rifle season because I was there and I almost shit my pants when the gun went off when it was so close. And I was like, I look at the time and I was like, well, that was 14 minutes before legal shooting light. But we have found some dead deer. I don't know if it's EHD. I don't know if it's CWD. I have hunted in areas with EHD, and it's not just like onesie twosies. It's like you find 3 or 4, and we have a river going right through our property. So I don't know what the answer is. But Western Kansas, like like the good old times is probably on the downward end of it.
Mm.
Not saying it can't come back, because there's a lot of things that are pointing in the right direction, but I do think from a habitat perspective and just a deer number perspective, there's going to be a lot of work. And I think the buyer is becoming savvy to that versus, like we're probably a couple of years ago, they're like, just buy, it's going to be great. And I think a lot of those people before that did buy at such a good price that they made 20 to 30%. Were like, man, this property kind of sucks. Or the expectations of the property were way off. And I'd like to talk about that. Like, stop. I feel like people, hear of these podcasts, well, like with Skip and, anybody else that's killed big deer, Lee Lukoski and the Drury's and Josh Bomar. And okay, maybe not the Drury's anymore, but like Skip, Josh, Lee Lukoski, and all those guys, their whole goal is just shoot a 200-inch deer. And then that makes everybody else believe we can all shoot 200-inch deer. And if you don't listen to them, like that's such an anomaly to have happen. So I think a lot of these people are buying farms going, I'm going to buy a farm in Kansas or Iowa or wherever, and I'm going to shoot a 180-inch deer. You might, but you should probably come in and go, like, for me, I've only shot a couple deer over 150. The partner, I never has. And so why on earth did we ever think, right, and like have the audacity to come in and say, we're going to go kill 180s and pass everything else? It's like, have fun. And I think that's a whole part of why there's an issue out there is like, and I'm not saying it was for Instagram. I don't, it was like, we wanted to be the lane. Hey, we're passing 4.5 to get them to 5. And I was like, so what I would do is kind of back up. If you're looking at purchasing, is go, where are you in your hunting career? And you talk about that life cycle of the hunter. Where are you? Is it to shoot the biggest deer possible? Okay, well, you might have to get into a neighborhood and pay a lot more to do that, right? Or maybe not and find that hidden gem. But if you're in the, hey, you shot some good deer, 150-inch deer is still 99% of whitetail hunters probably have never killed a 150, and I mean, really, I can count. I know all my friends in Minnesota, very few have, and so I think having expectations about the land was a big awakening for us too.
So you guys had super high expectations for this Western Kansas 160. Because, I wanted to ask you this because you would know better than probably anyone I've talked to. When people think of a 160, when I think of a 160 in Illinois, I'm like, oh man, that's a big track. How big does a 160 in Western Kansas feel? And then think of a 160 in Minnesota. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. A 160 in Western Kansas, just because there isn't a lot of timber, you can see fence line to fence line to fence line, so it's not big. In 160 acres to me is nothing, because I hike miles and miles and miles. And so it's not a big deal. But when I grew up, we had 300 acres in Minnesota. And that to me seemed so big. So yeah, it is. But it's all of what your expectations are going to be out of the ground. Are you going to expect to have a big, a mature buck on a 80 acre? Maybe, but I doubt he lives there. I bet he's there halftime at best, maybe not. One thing I will say about Kansas and my whole tune on feeders has totally changed, and a lot to do with listening to some of your podcasts and other podcasts about that. Even having 160 acres, we see bucks, and our feeders are 400 yards apart, probably maybe not even. And we have bucks that will hit one feeder and will not hit the other feeder. We've never gotten a picture on them. And so when people are like, you're going to get all these deer going all over the place. And I'm talking all year, rut, postseason, summer, there's a definitive one deer in particular. There was a definitive line. He only went to that other feeder when he got injured. And I think it was because he was going after the highest protein feed, but there was a definitive line. He never went to the other 80 acres. That was kind of eye opening to me on like patterns of bucks and core areas. But yet I would see him or heard of him a mile, what would be east of us. So he had a stop point. Like he never went into that neighborhood for whatever reason. And it wasn't because there was another big deer, because he was the king shit of the ground. So, but no, 160 is not a big acreage, but I would take an 80 over my 160 and be a sole owner 11 out of 10 times. unless that ownership was my dad, or I mean, shoot, even then it could get a little wonky. Like, I'd like to say like family, but like my family would be good, but it would be your significant other as a co-owner or no one at all. And I don't care how good you could be buddies since you guys were 2 years old. I'm telling you right now, I would almost, and I don't know who said this, but I would almost try to find two 80-acre pieces and just buy them separately. That and then, hey, you can be if you want to hunt together or whatever, but like something happens, that guy can sell it and he can choose the price. And if he doesn't, you can offer. And if that price, hey, where my offer is, you can go free market. That would be a lot easier than collaborating it. And that was something we didn't have the chance. You couldn't do it on our land because it's too diverse. Someone's going to be feeling like my land is as valuable as that side. So it wouldn't have worked. But it was divided up, I believe, into two 80s, but you just wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And the cost of a survey, if picture an 80 or a 160, and it's basically very, very similar. And even if you have to update the purchase price, like, hey, I think my side's probably worth 5% more, maybe 10% more because of this reason or that reason. If you want to pay an extra 10%, you can buy that side. Otherwise, I'm willing to pay an extra 10% for this side, and we own it independently. And God forbid something bad happens, and have some sort of you could have a documented first right of refusal actually recorded, or you could have a document that's just between you guys. But yeah, I think those are all really, really important. So you had mentioned that you guys had listed it and, drop. And basically where does this end, man? Like that's the question.
So I might be speaking incorrectly, but to my knowledge, I think I'm right. My cousin in Minnesota owns a real estate company. So he was helping me through a lot of this stuff. And honestly, the realtor that we used in Kansas, I love him. He's a great friend of mine. His family's awesome. Like there's no fault to him. I just think it was a bad time. And honestly, I think if I'd would have sent you the listing, Jake, you'd have been like, damn, this guy's good. Like it looked really good, but it was also unbeknownst to us, I think had been flipped one more time prior to us buying it. So it was kind of like, oh, look at this property back on the market again, another quick flip. So I think it had all of that. But it was, so when we got to the point of listing it, and this is where I was going with this, it only takes one signature to list the property. I don't think any realtor would take that listing, but you could. And so after 10 months, I just said, hey, I'm done with it. I had talked to a few of the locals, and we were kind of a laughing stock. Like, look at you guys. Like, it was like, how low will it go? And actually, a neighbor did make me an offer. It was super low. Like the bank would be owning our property. Like it was so. But I just said, hey, I'll offer you this. It wasn't up to his number, and it just goes back into an agreement. If we had an agreement, there'd be no negotiation. Hey, the agreement says this. I'll pay you that. And if he says no, then you would have to go get an attorney. The attorney would go, and it would cost you more money, but you could do it, right? Like you could probably, especially if an attorney drafted that agreement, right? He came back and offered a lot more, and I just said, you know what? No, let's just hold tight on it. Let's see. And one thing is, since we spoke, we were talking to do food plots, and I'm like, all right, great. But that doesn't change like where the direction of it's going. And so that's where it, kind of comes back into, why are you buying the land in the first place? How much, if you're doing it to flip it, that's when you need to be conscious. Just like a house flip, it's like, well, I'm not going to put in marble. I'm going to put, like, because
Yeah.
this is just quick flip. So, him and I are going to try to sit down and just be like, what's the future hold and everything like that, and figure out what the future is, because we're not going to put a ton of inputs into this place if we're not going to be able to reap that reward, or at least because you've been a great wealth of knowledge on your podcast about talking about like increasing values on farms. Well, it like planting a tree just doesn't grow 10 feet in a year.
Yeah, takes
Planting switchgrass is really probably probably a 3-year deal. Getting food plots established when our annual rainfall is 22.5 inches. What's it in Illinois? Do you have any idea? Like,
No, I'd have to Google it, but it's a lot more than that.
I think my dad on his property, because he's got now he has purchased some property, and my cousin, they both own land in Minnesota. I think they got more rain in like May, June than I'll get all year. So like it's you have to be smart on how to do things, and what to plant. And we did have a biologist walk the property, and he was a biologist.
Mhm.
So that's another tip. Like, I do think having those people walk properties is worth the money. It's kind of like an inspection on a house, right? Like,
Yeah, that's a good point.
You could do it, but it would feel a lot better if you paid to do it. Like you'd feel so. But here's a caveat: you need to figure out what's good for you. We did this guy we referred. I like him. Wild card dude. Like, if you want a 10-minute conversation, just block off for 2 hours. Like, maybe not that much, but he's a biologist. That is a drastically different thing than a whitetail guy. But I will that's changed because of people saying, I think the correct term, and I'm not the most, well, I would say I'm intelligent, but like not book smart, but an indicator species, right? You talk about like, hey, if the turkeys are good or pheasants or quail are good, all of a sudden my deer's good. So it's like a biologist isn't all bad, but if they don't hunt, it can be bad. But anyways, we had him walk, and it's just like learning about what grows in Western Kansas and the species of alfalfa or clover, or does clover even grow, right? And you listen to these guys that have done all this, and they have their lists of clover or alfalfa blends. Well, guess what? We got to figure out our own, because Western Kansas, people say, actually, food plots are so foreign to people. They just go, just talk to the farmer, leave in some crops. I'm like, yeah, you can, but that's not, we're trying to build like food plot and like, all that. So, yeah, I don't know. I digress on why I went off on that tangent, but yeah, I think it was a rainfall. It's just a different, what you're planting in Illinois is going to be probably drastically different than what we could plant in Western Kansas.
Yeah, I looked it up. We our average annual rainfall is 37 inches a year, and then our historical low, so extreme. This is historical extremes. The lowest annual rainfall in 2005 was 22 inches. So that's our worst year on record.
And that's our average year.
Yeah.
In this year, and so I will say the last few years have been great, but the regeneration of the areas that burnt off completely, I am surprised at how slowly they're coming back. Not only a combination of like some of the cattle ground, like we had cattle on a portion of ours that, again, they said there wasn't. Yeah, there was. And or the realtor said there wasn't. Yeah, there was. But I thought it would be like 2 years it'd be back. It really
look lush.
It's like it's taking a lot longer than I thought. And so like having that, like where you're buying and all this, like all that stuff goes into play that I brushed to the side. And like that was another thing of like, maybe doing your research. And now I feel like I'm an expert. Like the next property I'm going to buy, like I'm going to know everything that needs to know about what goes into it. But, you know, my exes will probably say I live hindsight being 2020. And if they won't listen to this, but if they did, they'd probably get a chuckle and be like, oh, if Joe just would stop saying that damn comment, we'd love it. But yeah, hindsight's 2020. I learned a lot. So,
Yeah.
But
Well, I think that's all very, very, very helpful for a lot of people of because land's expensive, and if you can afford a 20, a 30, or a 40, it is very, very, very tempting to be like, man, we could afford about double if we partnered on something. And I'm not totally opposed to that, to be honest, but I do think having some sort of agreement is a necessity on the
yeah,
front, because when it goes bad, it goes really bad. It never is like,
yeah,
it's just okay. Like it could be better. It's never
no,
that.
no, and you got to think of it more to like like this is truly like a divorce, really.
Right.
Not as like that, but it affects everybody. Like we have mutual friends, and that goes back into like the how like eaten up by this are you? I I I will say, like, when I was laying in bed and my ex was like, she's like it's the whole meme of like he's probably thinking of other girls, and then it comes up and I'm on Onyx or Hunt Stand, and I'm like, I'm drawing out acres of food
Oh yeah.
plots, and like that's how it was. And I think that if the person that might be a little bit more like, I feel maybe I'm a little bit more eaten up by it than he is, I got resentful, that's not something that's positive. Or if he feels, or your partner feels, that you're steamrolling everything because you think you know everything when I don't, like it's just not good. And so those are the conversations of like, hey, how do we work together here? Like, what type of personality are you? And it goes into like a therapy thing, like I don't want to say it's love languages, but kind of, how can I communicate with you? Because if I just go, hey Jake, I just bought 100 pounds of red crimson clover, we're going in this in frost seeding, and instead of being like, hey, we're thinking about this, what do you think we should do? And then you might come back and go, well, what blend's more drought tolerant? Why don't we put a blend in? And if I'm not open to receiving that, then it's just like, boom.
Yeah.
So, it's very much like a marriage. It truly is. And honestly, any hunting partner, whether it's in land or just hunting in general, is like that. You hear that a lot of like, finding a good hunting partner is harder than finding a wife. I don't know if it's that, but it's been that for me,
Uh-huh.
And so it's something you gotta like kind of take a step back, detach from the situation, and really think about the things that are important to you, and do they align with that person? And if they don't, can you have conversations to be able to figure that out, like and be able to work through those issues? And if the answer is no, then the answer will always be no. Like, whole thing, you're not going to change anybody. No one changing, especially now. Like, no, you're just going to be able to work better together or not,
Yeah.
So, yeah. But I don't want this to be discouraging. This still has been like the biggest, like, I don't want to say success, but still it fulfills me so much. Like, I go out there and I'm doing the work on the land, and whether he's involved or not, like when we're out there together, it's great. Like, it's been a good experience, other than we let the market kind of dictate our relationship.
None of this would have happened if you wouldn't have thought that you could have turned as quick of a profit.
100%.
So
None of it would have happened.
So this never would have happened if someone's like, "Hey, I'm pretty sure you can make."
Well, he had a few issues, and it was just yes, but no, not at all. I don't think so. Maybe he would have said something. Maybe and it would have been great to get him on. He'd be like, "Joe's a dick," like, and it could be like I think I can come across a bit brash at times, but no, I don't think it would have been. And we had this grandiose 5-year plan. And the why I picked 5 years was I knew that it was going to take at least 3 to get everything established, to at least show that it would
But then you
do
guys made
this.
true improvements, like true capital improvements, and then you're saving someone else 3 years of time to
Yep.
establish home season grasses, let things come back. Like
Yep.
all this takes time. I mean, that's just the
Uh-huh.
reality.
Well, and the whole thing of like what a lot of people would be, and I wanted to ask you this as a realtor, how many times do you do like maybe this isn't the term you get, but pocket listings where you don't really list it, but you got your list of people that you call. And maybe I don't want to be letting the
No,
rabbit out of the hat here. Okay.
it definitely happens, and I think people ask, well, why do people do that? And it's I think there's a variety of different reasons. Some people are super private and they would prefer to sell it, discreetly, and so, or maybe they have a flexible timeline, and so I think it happens, and it happens more often than you think, honestly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing of like even going into it. Hey, when you hit that point, how are you going to do it? Are you going to list it, or are you going to develop the 3 relationships with the 3 top land realtors and say, hey guys, I want you to come look at it. Here's what it started with. Where do you guys think it is? And then maybe you pocket list it and see. And if that doesn't work, because the way I look at it is, if you don't need to sell and you're just trying to test the market, I probably would do that. And I know that maybe you'd be like, well, I'd like to push it out to the masses. Yeah, but I don't need to sell. But if you have someone and the dollar figure is this, we're not going back and forth here. We're not going to, nickel and dime. It's like the dollar is this. And if you have a buyer, bring them up, and look at it. So there's a lot of different ways when you get into this that you can do it. You just don't need to get it out and start blasting. But I will say, the auction side of the house, I don't know, do you guys do a lot of auctions out east in Illinois?
Yeah, we tillable auctions are really big. Recreational properties, there's not as many auctions. There's I pay attention to a handful of them a year, but the Western. Well, here's the thing. So I don't know if you're getting to this, but some of the buyer's premiums on Western or Kansas auctions, land auctions. So here in Illinois, we hardly ever have a buyer's premium. It's pretty rare. Dude, some of those I've seen, they're like 7-8% buyer's premium. I was like, that's criminal. That's crazy. I don't know if that's where you're going, but I wanted to bring it up. It's nuts.
Well, but I was bringing it up by that. Yeah, for sure. But then also, I think the seller is still paying more than, like, they're up by 5 to 7% to just
That's
do it.
So crazy.
But my point to that is out in Western Kansas over the last 2 years, I've watched nearly all the farm ground or potential hunting ground. I've watched all the auctions. It's always got my work computer watching this. It is such a huge swing. Like, I've seen some properties that I was like, I'd pay 3,000 an acre right now for that, and they go for 2,200 an acre. A property just sold that I think 3,000 would have been high, and it went for like 4,200 an acre.
Wow.
And so it's all over the map on that. But that is also the reason I bring it up is you don't have to you don't have to go do the listing thing. Like, you could if you have the money, but then the reason that I think your point is valid, you need to add that in of what the buyer's premiums are going to be for that, because maybe all of a sudden you're like, I could pay 3,000. Well, really that 3,000 is more like 3,100 or 3,150 after that. You got to be careful with that. So it makes a big difference.
3,210 is what it would be as a buyer on that, on 3,000.
See,
7% buyer's premium. Yeah.
That's and people don't think of that. I didn't think of that until I started watching the auctions every other week.
Yeah, there's been some more people that do buyer's premium over this direction. But it seems to be a Western thing for some reason, and I haven't quite figured that out. I've never asked anyone either that is in the auction business why they do it. But Buck Land Funding, if you don't know who they are and you're looking to buy a piece of ground, I encourage you to reach out to them. They're chartered in multiple states across the Midwest, and they understand recreational land. I've said it a million times here on the podcast. The most important piece of buying your first piece of ground is finding a partner, finding a bank that understands what you're trying to do, that has competitive rates and understands the world of recreational land, because not all banks are created equal, and Buck Land Funding understands our crazy goals of scooping up a piece of ground
to enjoy it with family, to hunt it, to use it as an investment. They understand that and work with that every single day. I encourage you to reach out to them. If you're in the process of buying your first or 20th farm, reach out to Buckland Funding at bucklandfunding.com. Back to the conversation.
I think the auctions could be in that type of partnership relationship. Like, hey, we'll sell it for this. Nope, you don't want to buy it. Okay, we're going to do an auction. We agree on this auction company. We think they're going to do the best job. But I would advise people that some parts of the country auctions do really, really well, and it's a true way to find the true market value. And then there's some places where it's just like, man, probably not the best venue to sell a piece of ground.
Yep. Yeah. And that's the thing, is looking at all of it is I think a big thing of like trying to, find a realtor that's knowledgeable in all aspects and all options to, number one, buy and sell farms.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing in Western Kansas, I want to ask you as a realtor, there isn't like a lot of realtors, like they hawk everything. Like they're the buyer and the seller. And like I even asked a realtor when I was buying, I was like, hey, this other guy has this price listed. Do you want to go look at it with me? And he's like, nah, just call him. I was like so nonchalant. And it happened a couple times. Now, maybe they didn't think I was a real buyer. I don't know.
Maybe like this Joe guy's been calling us for 2 years. He's not buying anything.
Yeah. But that is something out in Western Kansas. Like you,
I don't recognize that. Yeah.
Okay.
It may happen here, but
it may be a me thing. Maybe people just don't want to work with me. They're like, yeah, this guy's nuts. It could be.
This is a cowboy thing out there, man. Go saddle your own horse. I don't know.
It's the Wild West. We're open carry. We're we got the guns in the truck. We're shooting everything. Yeah, no, it is a little Wild West out there, but I love it.
Yeah, no, that's really fascinating. I've had the itch to buy something in Kansas for a while. I really don't think I'll pull the trigger anytime soon. But it seems to be. I was just like you, like 3 years ago. I was like, man, I should probably buy something in Kansas. And then it's like, holy cow! And then you go look 6 months later, and you're like, man, I should have bought something in Kansas. And then 6 months later, I don't know. It seems to be. It seemed like there was quite a bit of rush, and I think there's a variety of different reasons why. But it's a really cool state, I think. I haven't spent much time out there, but just looking at listings and everything else, it's it's totally different than what I'm used to here in Illinois.
Yeah. And and even in like the central part of the state, it's you still get that huge diversity of land and everything, and you can get in the hills and everything like that. Like it's pretty cool. I mean, it even though it doesn't have like the big wooded timbers, it does have like in areas like the southern Iowa vibes, like the deep cuts and then the egg up on top, and so. But I would also say, like, one thing for me, we talked about this in the beginning, is you need to put a radius of where you're gonna feel comfortable driving, especially as if it's not just down the street in your neighborhood. For me, I thought 4.5 hours wasn't going to be an issue. Because I travel, like, just to get to some hunting spots that I've hunted in Colorado is 3 to 7 hours of where I've hunted. And so like, that's just kind of a normal thing. But our mutual friend, Jeremy, who purchased some land, he was talking about, buying land in southern Wisconsin, I believe. And then I'm like, hey man, like, you really should look at the logistics of this. He also has a young daughter, family. And I think that should be almost kind of top priority, because the moment you lose the want to go out there, you're not going to do the needed things. Moment I'm feeling like, well, I should go, but I don't want to go. I got this. It's just, it's not going to work. And I think that that's been overlooked, especially when you're like, the reason I brought it up was like, Kansas is probably what, 5-6 hours for you?
The places I've looked at anywhere from 8 to 13 hours. Yeah.
And so now you're like,
that's the bug. That's what it's like, man, there's got to drive through a lot of really pretty country to get there.
Yep. Yeah. And now you're talking.
I'm a huge advocate of talking to clients. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm a huge advocate when I talk to clients of like, what's your radius and what you're wanting to do. And to me, I feel like under 2 hours is ideal, and like an hour and a half is even better. And then unless, I live in a rural area, it's like 20 minutes is awesome. I mean, that's really, I can drive my tractor from here to the farm. It's going to take me an hour, but I can do that.
Yep. Like, just think of like the small things. if you got to go, if a camera's down, like, hey, I don't care what brand of cell cams you work with or use or whatever, they all have problems. Like a storm goes through, zaps, it happens. That's really tough to be able to get a 4-hour drive just to go replace the batteries. And it's
Yeah.
even harder to even find, I don't care if you find a young kid, like you got to be able to trust that kid to be like, yeah, go replace the batteries and do all that. Like, yeah, you can find those, but that's still an added cost. Like yeah, it might be $20 to just, hey, kid, go buy a case of beer. Thanks for running out there. But, it opens up a Pandora's box of, all the things that are needed to be successful land managers. That's in consideration. And that's where it goes back to, what are you doing it for? Are you going to go buy the land and then just hunt the land and be fine with it and then just be happy with what happens? Or are you going to buy the land to really make improvements? That's where you got to figure out on your own, and where your heart lies on all of that, because that's a big that's a big thing to look into. Because trust me, I hate driving my Raptor truck 330 miles for just a day, one way. And it's like, oh my God, I'm averaging 13 miles or 12 miles.
Oh, dude.
Like, this is terrible. Like,
yeah, that is brutal. That is brutal.
Yeah.
How much have you been spending a year in supplemental feeding? That was another thing that I factored into Kansas of like, okay, you got to have someone to go fill the feeders, because that's
Yep.
what I would want to do. How much are you? I'm just super curious.
So it just depends on what you're doing, right? So supplemental feeding to me is not corn, like just corn. So we have one 3,000 pound feeder that's on a spreader. And that's like, we just do corn, and that's where all the people are being like, great, you're not going to get CWD or whatever. That's about like $300 or $400 to fill up on corn, depending on where it is. That's kind of what we average. Now it's all just depending. Like I would say just corn, we're probably at about $700 to $800 a year on just corn. Now you go into the protein feed. That's a whole new and actually the realtor we use, he owns his a feed company. I'll give him a plug. GB Feeds out of Hayes, Kansas. I know they're all really similar, but when we put that out, so then we have another 2,500 pound feeder on the west side that is a gravity feeder, because protein feed, you start spinning it, it just breaks apart, and they don't get the benefit of it. But then you do bring into the mix of saliva on the tubes and all this other stuff. That is about, so we have a 4-spout tube. We had to turn off 2 of the tubes. We just put 2x4s in there because they were just eating it so much. But that's about $300 every 45 days. So, and we don't keep, what is that? Just do $300 every 2 months. So what is that?
So I did the
$1,800.
So yeah, $1,800 to $2,400. If it's truly 45 days, it's like $2,500, $2,400.
Yeah. And so if you want to do it. Now, here's the thing. If you don't have any food on your property and you want deer coming through there, I don't want to fall into, well, your neighbors are doing it. Like, well, they're doing it. So, and guess what? I also know my neighbor. So I want to talk about the protein feed. We'll fill that feeder, and I've had it filled all like growing season long. It is exponentially, I don't even want to say it's 10x. It might be 100x. The bucks and the does that have fawns don't go to the corn. It's almost to me like I'm going to let that go and like not even worry about it. Like it's just like, I don't want to say it's a weight. It's a raccoon feeder is what that is.
Right. Yeah.
But the protein feed, they are all hitting it. And I am under the impression from my personal, I like I said, I'm a dummy. I would rather feed the protein feed and risk them having saliva and all that, whatever you want to say. I think having a healthier deer will be able to combat sicknesses and injuries and everything else versus not having it. So that's the camp I live in. But my goal is to potentially have your habitat feed the deer where you don't need to supplemental feed.
Mhm.
So that's just me. Oh, did you have that little blip on the screen?
I pressed the wrong button.
I was like, what is that?
Yeah, that's a
Um,
presentation. Yeah, that's
so
that's really fascinating because I
yeah,
always wonder. It's like, okay, so those that's the other thing too. Kansas really produces no income, and I'm comparing it to Illinois, like in the heartland here. So
yep.
there's really no income on the ground, and then you're going to have to spend a few $1,000s a year in order to feed deer, and then so I'm not trying to be a cheapskate by any means because the ground is cheaper than what it is here. And it's like that's kind of I think that's probably been part of the bottleneck of me wanting to really make the plunge out there. It's like, man, yeah,
So
the ground's cheaper, but then you look at all these different things, like, yeah, I don't know.
we have some ag, but it's
Okay.
not great. So we have
Okay.
70 acres of ag that we rent out, and it's basically for easy math. It's we receive that's one free monthly payment, and then
Mm.
a little portion of the taxes a year.
Yeah.
But yes, in Kansas, well, honestly, I think everywhere there isn't any cash flowable ground. Like if you want to put like pen to paper on this, like I don't know of any unless you can buy it. If you're financing it, I don't know of any ground anywhere because the seller is too smart. They know what cash rent is going for, and it's I'm not a mathematician, but it's easy math to back into the numbers of what it should be sold for. So,
Mhm.
unless you're in it for the long game, you can't justify that. But my uncle's is a financial planner,
Okay.
very successful guy. So I do have a lot of good people telling me things, and I have been fairly smart with saving money, even though I talk about buying that stupid truck. But that was before I had kids, and it was all the pandemic, and it was kind of like my quarter life crisis. I was like, I'm gonna buy this damn badass truck, like so but he did say like and you talked about this with Jeremy about all the buckets of money that people have,
Mhm.
and the bucket that I was pulling from is, yes, it's like long-term investment, but the way I look at it and the way my uncle has looked at it, and actually I think when you were talking to Bobby, they said this, like no financial planner is going to say like, don't buy land.
Mhm.
Um, and what you need to value is, do you enjoy, like my money's in the market, right? Yeah, like just like longer term, the S&P 500, those type of things. Do you enjoy, like kind of I do, seeing the green on your app every day when you check it and going, nice, I just made whatever, right? Or are you going to be okay with taking money out of that and then going, now it's in the land bucket? But guess what? The land should increase in value. But let's say it doesn't. And yes, you aren't paying interest on the mortgage and everything, but that's just cost of doing business. Like you shouldn't, unless you're an accountant, and even if you're an accountant, you should not look at like, well, the interest paid. Yeah, well, if you're going to look at that, don't finance land. Like, don't finance a house. Don't
Yeah.
finance a car. Like, but you can't, or you should try to put a value on your enjoyment on the land. And I will tell you, like, I don't want to be emotional about it. I love it. Like,
Mhm.
getting out to the land and seeing it is like, I don't know, but like, I don't want to say euphoric. It's just it's like the reset of like,
Yeah.
oh, this is my ground. Oh my God. Yeah, I'm in this shitty situation. Oh, the ground is like, the ground is shitty, but like you can't, and this is like, you see this quote, you can't pour from an empty cup. That fills my cup, just like Western hunting does. And
Mhm.
so if you're feeling drawn to do it, and like, I talk like I know these guys. I don't know. But Skip just says, buy the land. Figure, like, don't be stupid, but buy the land.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, if you're getting drawn to being like, I want to try this, do it. Because guess what? You might crack down on being like, well, I was a knucklehead when I was younger, like popping bottles and doing all that in the big city. Like that was me. I was that, like, oons, oons, like all of that. If I wouldn't have done that and bought land, like I would have been way more happy. But guess what? Like I don't go out that much anymore. Number one, I have twins. So like half the time when I have them, I'm like underwater anyways. But now you're more smart. It's like, okay, could I go out and spend a weekend day drinking, watching football like I used to, and I still probably do, but, or can I save that money and put it towards land? Or do I need to save it because now I need to make the effort to that because that fills my cup up. That's where people need to go because within reason, if you're looking to buy land, you're probably in a spot that you probably have some discretionary income. And you're probably also the person going to Starbucks spending $8 on a latte every day. And you're also the person probably buying or going out to dinner when you could cook at home. And if you're sitting there going, I just don't have the money, if you really peel back the layers, you probably do. Or you have the ability to at least cut the corners. So full circle is for me, I'm looking at this land instead of me just putting all the money into the market and being happy when I see green or being pissed when I see red. I'm looking at it like, okay, now I'm in a new bucket and I have these buckets of whatever you want, savings, retirement, whatever you want to call it. But at least this bucket I'm getting enjoyment from and should appreciate over time versus like my truck. I do get enjoyment driving it and it's fun, but it's not appreciated.
I was gonna make a joke about how much value your truck make or loses on each trip back
No.
and forth.
That, you know what? I don't even the bug that you
600
just
miles. Yeah.
the bug that you just put into my mind, I'm like, dude, stop. I'm like, you're right. But you know, it's who just said it on your podcast? I think it was Bobby. And he said, you learn when you get older that those things don't matter.
Mhm.
And I heard that and I'm like, I knew the moment I signed on that dotted line with that truck. And again, it's just, I don't want to be like, it's not a Rolls Royce, guys. It's just a Ford Raptor. And it's like, I had it built out and I think it's awesome. It's not awesome to get 2.5-year-old kids out of the back seat and car seats. I'll tell you that. So it's not a good grocery getter. But as soon as I bought it, I knew I was like, this is just one part in my life. And then you realize like, okay, the next, like, who cares? Now I don't care. Like if Jake would be like, hey, Joe, I want you on the podcast, but I need to know what truck you drive. What? No one ever's going to do that.
Only Ford Raptor guest only.
Yes. Well, thank you.
or-
I don't know why you had Jeremy on with his stupid Tundra or whatever he drives. So, but
No.
yeah.
Well,
So-
if you had to summarize all this into like a sentence, what would you tell someone that's looking to make it their first purchase based off of, you know, like everything we talked about? If you boil it down into one word or one sentence, what would you say?
I would say it's going to be it might be 2 sentences.
Okay, that's fine.
Do your soul searching for what is going to be important for you. Do your research about that. And then just understand that if you are looking to get into a partnership, that crossing all the potential hardships ahead of it will ultimately only pay dividends in the long run. And then I will take it and say, if you're looking at it and you have the means and you're not going to be not being able to afford your house payment, buy the land. Because if something's telling you to buy the land, you're going to find the enjoyment like I have. Like I said, like I that long easement road, I know it's a easement road driving in, it just totally, something changes in my whole being and I love it. And guess what? I don't think very many people, and it's not for everybody. So just find out if that's for you. And if it is, try to make it work if you can.
I love it. Yeah. No, it's one of those things that you can tell someone and someone can hear this. And I've said it before on the podcast, but it's like that intrinsic value you cannot explain. When I was just thinking of this and talking about it the other day, it's like we planted a bunch of oak trees 3 years ago. And now you go back there, it's like, holy cow, this tree's taller than me now. And it's like such a silly thing. And you could never it'd be silly to put a dollar amount on it, but that enjoyment is very real. And I know it sounds corny and weird, but I 100% agree with you.
Yeah. Do you have kids?
No kids yet.
All right. Well, it's the whole thing of everybody says you don't know until you're a parent. And I was like, yeah, whatever. Now, you don't know the unconditional love and you could be told a million times, you'll never know. And I'm not comparing land to the kids. What I'm saying is the feeling of, if it's a passion of yours, the feeling of having that land is something that until you own it isn't, you can't, you don't know, at least in my experience. And I'm on here, like, I know I'm saying a lot of the negative. It's not that bad. Like, having a dispute over this is not going to ruin your life. It's not going to ruin mine. And honestly, I truly hope that it doesn't ruin the friendship that I have. I really don't. I hope that we can repair, because there's been a lot worse relationships over the time of people's lives that have been repaired. But what I'm saying is, just do your, hey, listen to me, listen to a bunch of other guests on your podcast and a ton of other good podcasts, and just snippets of each, and just make it yours, and then know going into it. But I don't think if someone wants to buy land, you're gonna sit there and go, or I haven't, maybe you could say this, I haven't heard anybody be like, damn, I wish I wouldn't have done that. You know,
It would have to be very rare, or some like catastrophic thing happen in their lifetime, or maybe, yeah, it's way more I wish I would have than I wish I wouldn't have.
exact
Way
for
more.
me. I
Yeah.
wish I would have, and I still would have bought the land. Like, you say, hey Joe, would you still do it? Yeah, I would have done it a little, but not even a big difference, just a little different. It was
Mhm.
one piece that got messed, and then it. So there you go. But
Well,
again, I don't want to make it all doomsday, sad sap. No, it's not. It's you make your bed and you sleep in it too. But yet, I want people. I feel like everybody talks about the successes of life, especially when in the day of, I'm going to get on a soapbox, especially in the day of social media where everybody sees positive, and everybody then compares that positive to everything in life, and especially hunters. Like, I look at like your antlers back there, and I'm like, damn, that's sweet. Why the hell I don't have that? And then you're doing the comparison thing, and it's like,
yeah.
I think that people like, no one knows what went into finding those. And quite honestly, maybe you went to a deer farm and found them, but no one knows that. And you're like, you just.
None of these ones. I do have some of those, but they're not behind me.
So does my cousin in his place, and it's like 270-inch side of. I'm like, why do you even have those? It's so odd. But like, it's the comparison side of it, and that's where it's like, everything isn't sunshine and rainbows, but everything also isn't doom and gloom. And so just kind of know that going in is like, all right, I would assume even some of the guys that have bought and sold a ton of farms, if they kind of flipped it and was like, looked at the, I guess, glass half empty side of it, they would have a ton of things to talk about that they wish they would have done differently.
Well, none of them think that way though. That's why they've been successful. I feel like all
You're
these guys are
exactly
very,
right.
very
Yep.
optimistic, and not comparison is the thief of joy. And I think the other thing too is
Yes.
is people, and I definitely was probably guilty of this at some point. It's like, man, this guy has that. That's amazing. It's like, man, that guy's been doing it for 30 years. I've been doing it for 3. So
Yep.
it's like, it's not even a fair comparison. And I think you have to realize where you're at in your process. And I don't know. I think the podcast, and I've had the privilege of talking to so many people that are so helpful, encouraging. No one is discouraging in this community of like, no, you'll never get there, or no, it'll never happen. They're all super, super positive and
Yep.
encouraging folks. And so I think that's,
And I think
top
that's
line for
something
me.
that needs to be said, because I think us as hunters recently, or at least a few years ago, we're so cannibalizing with each other of like, Jake, you shoot a crossbow and this and that. And I know, like, I'll talk shit about crossbows too, but like,
I do not shoot one, just to set the record straight.
yeah, just to be clear. But we all just like talked garbage. And then I feel like there's been a shift, and I don't know if it's since I've had land and then now like tried to seek out information. And I feel like it's so much out there now, but everybody's so helpful, and no one's like, it's almost like you hear Joe Rogan, who's the king of podcasters, talk about he wants everybody to get into podcasting. When has that ever happened? And he always says there's always a seat at the table. There's going to be more. And I think that's the whole point of like, I'm trying to help people, you're trying to help people, and no one's sitting there going like, no, I have the best farm in the country and I'm not going to share how I got there. Which in a lot of lines of business and communities, that's how it happens. And I feel like this is kind of the start of, I don't want to say the awakening of the hunting community, but we need in all levels, Western hunters to Midwest, stand up together and lock arms. And yeah, we still can kind of make fun of each other for shooting a small buck. It is what it is. But yet, if we don't come together, we're going to probably lose the privilege of hunting at some point, and I feel like these podcasts for me I just talked to a guy yesterday who was like, I'm off social media. It's poison. It's all this. I'm like, I get it, but you've been off of it for a year. And at least the people, my algorithm has been all uplifting, informational. Hey, how can I help? All of those things. And I think it's fantastic. And I think that there's all levels, like me, not knowing a single thing, having no equipment, just trying to do what I can, all the way up to the guys that have everything, excavators, dozers, the $1 million planters, all of it. And everywhere in between, we all can have a seat at the table. We just got to open the door to it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love it. Well, Joe, I appreciate your time and your story here. I hope everything continues to trend positively for you. You're super talented behind the camera. So if someone wants to follow you on Instagram, where do they do that?
Yeah, thank you. Well, hopefully maybe we'll have another podcast of how it turned around and how it became, whatever. Maybe we could do that. So I'll keep you posted. But, social media is just Joe.Kavanaugh, Kavanaugh with a K. Follow me. That's kind of it. I know it all links to Facebook, but Instagram is kind of where I am. And then a part of the farm, I am doing a little project called the Average Joe Project. Just honestly, it's just a little YouTube series. And it really is Average Joe. Like just I started it because I felt like there was a gap between like old farmer Joe that was doing the thing that was such a terrible YouTube series, and then you get the Josh Bomars and Lee Lakosky, and they have all of it. There was like this middle gap that was missing. So I started this little YouTube series. It's on the Numa Outdoors page. And the reason I partnered with them, because truly I know nothing about YouTube, and they have a channel, and I was like, hey, you take it. I just enjoy doing it. I really enjoy the photography side. So I really appreciate that comment as well too. So yeah, if anyone wants to check it out, it's probably a little bit more Western than some of your guests. I get Western hunting, but yeah, it's got some good whitetail stuff on.
Well, I think it'll be cool for people to be able to picture. As I've been listening here, I've been kind of like picturing what this farm may look like in my head. Now I can go look and get an idea what it actually looks like.
Yeah, for sure. So
well, awesome. Thank you so much, and I look forward to keeping the updates. And I'm looking forward to hopefully you shooting a big deer this year on your own.
Same to you. I look forward to staying in touch as well, man. Thanks again for having me.